there's the immediate threats and the long-term threats. And by threats, I don't mean verbal threats in this particular scenario, although those have happened. What I mean is very real scenarios and situations based upon statistics and likelihood. This isn't just based on my experience. I believe wholeheartedly in learning from the mistakes of others. Many of the polls taken recently have shown us that the police make a lot of mistakes, and that their mistakes are easy to cover up based on the fact that they have access to your money. The money that you worked for, the money that you earned. Their expenses. It's difficult for them to do their jobs when they're busy spending that money to protect themselves from their own wrongdoing. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to be grabbed. It's pretty important. And I'm hoping we'll be able to do that at some point tomorrow. I have some of it in my vehicle. I'm hoping I'll be able to get somebody to help me sort through what's in my vehicle at least far enough to get down to that paperwork. One of the things that's important to note is that the details of the situations that I've been involved in, I've spoken the truth about those situations. I don't hide the things that I've done for a reason. I believe that honesty is the right way to go to this day. The problem is getting people to actually listen, to understand. Some of these predators' names need to be written down. And these predators and their actions and the repercussions of those actions do need to be addressed. Especially when they're people in positions of power who use that power to dissuade others from doing what's right and doing what's lawful. Many of these people have badges, and that's abhorrent. The rubber stamp system that we're currently utilizing in the United States does not work. It cannot work, especially in something that we want to call a democracy. The hallmark of a true democracy is an educated populace. When their education is two parties throwing propaganda at each other and mudslinging, well, then our politics and our national government on every level has become the Maury Povich show. I have to deal with a lot of people who are predatory, specifically towards me, people like Andrew Wolnez. If he knew the truth, he wouldn't be harming me, he'd be thanking me. And the same is true for most of you, with the exception of you sick shits who tried to play victim. There's not much I respect more than a person who admits they fucked up. Hence the reason I admit when I fuck up. I also project my actions before doing them. There's a reason for that. There is a reason that when I'm trying to turn somebody in, that I speak up publicly about my attempts to turn that person in. The reason for that is because so many people want to play victim and go, oh, poor me. I'm afraid for my life because Sean's trying to tell on me. Wolves in sheep's clothing. And it's difficult when the people that I have to rely on out here on the streets are primarily people who are strung out on drugs, strung out on alcohol, have severe mental issues. They're not reliable. Then again, the police do everything that they can to capitalize on that. And I've recorded that. The runaround. The same thing with TFCC, TCCHC. The Office of the Aging and the Disabled. When somebody wants to slander my name, pretend I'm some sort of a monster as an excuse for their harm, I'm willing to show them the truth. But if they don't want to hear it, that's not my fault, that's theirs. And when those people harm me because they don't want to know the truth, and they try to incite others to harm me because they don't want to know the truth, they just want someone to hurt, they want to see someone else get it worse than them, it's horrible. I make sure that I record for my safety and for the safety of those around me. We've gotten to see time and again on my channel how the police and many others, including the staff at homeless centers and homeless resource centers, treat the homeless and disabled, especially the mentally disabled, people like Jamie in the Dalles, Oregon. People like Daniel in Hood River, Oregon. There's a lot of people who are violent-minded, and that's the first thing that many of us are taught to go to. When one of our friends tells us they're being harmed, we're taught that we're supposed to offer up violence, right? Or we're supposed to say that we're sorry. Instead of saying those things, we should be listening. When your friend is being harmed, the most important thing you can do is listen. That's the most important thing you can do. Instead of asking them what you can do to help, you need to listen. That's the first thing you can do to help. There's important things that you need to know, and that important stuff is important not to interrupt because you're going to derail the train. When somebody is overwhelmed, especially in this complicated a situation, you need to not interrupt them. Because when you do, you're not treating it like the emergency that it is. The victim has a limited amount of time to turn it in before they're treated like it's not a serious situation or like they didn't try. For me, what I'm supposed to do is go to a friend or family member first when I'm harmed, because the police aren't likely to take it seriously in any other scenario. And I've shown you time and again what happens when people just procrastinate on it, and the police are allowed to pretend whatever they want in any scenario, making it their word versus mine instead of the evidence being what's important. When there is video and audio evidence of the situations, and instead of looking at those, you have to deal with a bunch of people in a stacked deck. A lot of people who did wrong things because you're just not important. You're not important enough. You don't matter because you're alone. And when they get busted doing that, they don't have any incentive to do their jobs anymore. They've refused to do their jobs, and now they don't want to get in trouble. When you're making me go back to people who don't want to get in trouble to turn them into themselves, they're going to capitalize on that opportunity to put their bullshit onto the victim. And this is never okay. And none of you truly understand how horribly we on the streets are treated, especially males. We have something out here that we call a roll-through. A roll-through is somebody who really doesn't do wrong shit, but they get victimized often and they're desperate. Sometimes it's a felon who can't get a job. Nobody wants to hire him. There's no opportunities in the area. Sometimes it's a homeless person. Somebody who's easy to take advantage of, like someone with a quote-unquote mental illness. And it could be any mental illness. In the courts, it's all going to get treated like a violent schizophrenic person no matter what. That's what mentally ill means to the courts. So when you're wanting to argue about your definition of what the fuck ever, keep in mind that if you're depressed because you just lost a baby, you're depressed for a reason. You're feeling a very real human emotion, and you have every right to feel that. But in the courts, what that means is that you're mentally ill, and therefore they're going to treat you like you're a violent schizophrenic, like you're off your fucking rocker as a human being and nothing that you say is credible. Well, excuse me, says I, but just because you had a baby that you lost recently doesn't mean that you're not well aware of what physical harm against you is. Now let's take the scenario of many of you women, and many of you men as well have been in this scenario, where you're getting smacked by your spouse, or you're sexually objectionalized in a very uncomfortable manner. Now as a male, you have to take it with a grain of salt every time. And you have to be afraid because a lot of women will not take no for an answer. As far as a relationship goes, these YouTube channels that y'all watch, most of them focus on, instead of interpersonal relationships, they focus on boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. Husband-wife type relationships. Well, there's a lot of other people you have to relate to in order to be a part of society and be productive. You have to relate to your coworkers. Absolutely. If you don't relate to your coworkers, it kind of makes it uncomfortable to be working with you. I had some help today filling out some paperwork, and the lady actually went out and bought 328 gigabyte, what are they called? Micro SD cards. That way I can record offline on the telephone. She's also gotten me a lot of stuff in the past that was useful, like a first aid kit. When I had my ear infection, she gave me some stuff to get the nastiness out of my ear. She's helped me with food, helped me move my vehicle, and I'm thankful for the help. But tomorrow she's going to be able to sit down with me and look at some stuff with me so that she can help to understand. And hopefully we'll be able to get an email. That's been, for a couple of months, that's been a big issue her not being able to have an email address that I can send her evidence to, because a lot of it is across the internet that way. So other people's abilities do affect my abilities as well. Just because I have the ability to call somebody doesn't mean they have a phone I can call them on. Meanwhile, there's a lot of opportunity for people who screwed up to make amends. Just admit you screwed up. I do. A lot of people want to blame me for things that they screwed up or things that they assume are screw ups. No, my screw ups are all intentional. They're just unfortunate. When a person's friends and family are being threatened, who would just let that go over and over again? How many times would you be willing to let it go? Now imagine that your friends are having their lives threatened directly. Your sister, your niece. There's a lot of predators who I'm going to try to go over with a lady tomorrow. I'm going to try to show her as much as possible, and hopefully she'll take notes. Some of the names are important. Hopefully I'll be able to show her in just a couple of hours as much as humanly possible. Because it's important for her to know how the past and everything that was done to me, how it affects my future, and why it is that I don't have one. Hopefully in that time I'll also be able to show her enough to understand that there's literally thousands and thousands and thousands of screenshots to go through. There's over 16,000 screenshots on one of my telephones. That's a lot. That's a whole lot. The things that I did and at the times that I did them all show that I was trying to turn things in. That I was going to the people who were supposed to advocate for me, and those people did not. When they did quote unquote advocate for me, it was either situations that I had to force or situations where I just have to believe them, but they've never come forward about to anyone but me. If those things really happened that you claim, these roadblocks that prevented you from helping in the way that you said that you would, you need to come forward about those. Because I get treated like I wasn't making any effort at any point in time to get help. Like I never once tried going to the police to help put a stop to it. It's not the way that I've gone and approached it. It's the assumptions of who must be guilty that I've had to deal with. Once you've looked at the evidence, there is no doubt in anyone's mind who is the aggressor and who is the victim in the situation with Natalie Bollinger. Natalie and I were both victims of her friends and family, of their pride, of their mistakes, and their willingness to do anything to hide those mistakes, even if it cost us our lives. Natalie Bollinger taught me that sometimes you get a family that's so bad that there is literally no way out. There's literally no way to get away from them. Natalie had literally one person looking out for her. And that one person was me. And when I was stranded in the middle of the road in Chesapeake, Virginia, with my vehicle broken down and my busted ass phone making a fucking hell out of things, a phone that was a gift for my birthday from Alicia Bollinger. It was already broken. I could already tell how her family was going to play it off. Natalie had already let me know what kind of folks they were. I already knew that no matter how much I cared about Maddie Boa, Natalie Bollinger, and Alicia Bollinger, that I needed to let them go, that they weren't ready to get off the drugs or to stay off of the drugs. And as a result, they weren't going to do anything but hurt people. I also knew that they weren't able to pull themselves away from their predators because they had a dependency on those predators. I wish my older brother Eric actually loved me. I wish that my mother actually loved me. I wish that my father actually loved me. I wish that my sister actually loved me. But we don't get everything that we wish for. I didn't get everything that I wished for, and Natalie certainly didn't get what she wished for. There was no way out for Natalie. There was no way to get away from her predators. And there was no way for her to do the right thing without her predators getting angry at her, getting angry with her, bullying her to do what they want her to do. And because she loved them, she did what they wanted. Instead of telling people the truth, she let them hurt me over things that did not happen. She knew they didn't happen. Her sister knew they didn't happen. And if I'd had the ability to take screenshots, I could have shown her that those things were happening to me. Natalie Bollinger's family are horrible people. And the things they incited people to do to me is horrible as well. You listen to all these folks who want to make false allegations as excuses for actually physically harming me. And then they want to say that they're afraid that people will harm them because I told the truth. You're angry that I told the truth. I get it. Natalie was angry I told the truth. Wolnez is angry I told the truth. Waylon Lolatai is angry that I told the truth. Officer Campbell was angry I told the truth, and so was Officer Waylon Lolatai, Officer Herr, and Officer Vanderleest. Sheriff Scott DaCosta was angry too. So were his deputies, Cody Selhorst, Jared Hahn, James Harrell, just to name a few. And who could forget Deputy Jordan Anderson? This is a big mess. And nobody can quite understand that we're all going through this. Are we going through this together, or are we going through it alone? If we're all going through it, we're all going through it together regardless. Whether or not we stick together to do something about it is a different story. A lot of people wanted to say that they would help me, but then they made everything about them every time, over and over again, just eating up so many hours of my time. So instead of getting the help that I was promised, I'm ending up doing the job of a therapist, listening to these people for hours on end telling me about all their problems. And then later on, they say things like, well, what about those 2 hours I spent with you like 3 weeks ago? Well, turns out it was months ago, and those couple hours were spent talking about you, your family. Some of these people, they wanted to talk to me about tarot cards. I don't care about tarot cards. I care about actual evidence. There's a lot of physical abusers that I've had to deal with. People who physically abused me because they were lied to. Does that make it okay? Does it make it okay to physically assault someone because you heard a rumor? I've heard lots of rumors. I've recorded the rumors I've heard. Posted a lot of them live on YouTube for y'all to hear. But do I go assaulting these people? Do I go hunting them down like the dogs that they are? Do I go pursuing them to get violent with them? No, not ever. You get to see out of all the probably 36 or more situations with Andrew Wolnez, not once did I take after him. Not once did I pursue him. When he came to places that I went elsewhere to the best of my abilities. When he came up to my vehicle and was kicking on it on multiple occasions at the library parking lot, at the center market, the First Christian Church, Safeway parking lot, and they're throwing rocks at me and my vehicle. There's over 30 recordings, probably closer to 40, of him doing this shit and playing victim afterwards. Oh, poor me, poor me. Sean recorded me doing wrong shit. I'm such a victim. No, you're not. The difference now is that I have the ability to take screenshots. I have the ability to record these situations. If I'd have had those abilities before Natalie was killed, I do believe that Natalie would have put a stop to this situation. She would have recognized what a fucked up situation it was, and she would have told people the truth. The thing is, the people who were being predatory towards me, the very people who had harmed her before she moved to Virginia and repeatedly harassed her while she was in Virginia. These were the drug addicts in her life, the people who enabled her to get her drugs and to use her drugs. Many of them had interests in Natalie beyond just drug use. A lot of those people used the drugs that she was addicted to, well, to try to get other things out of her, things that are ungentlemanly to require of a woman. One of these people is her own father. The man who got her addicted to those drugs to begin with. The man who had her and her sister out there selling those drugs at 13 and 14 years of age. The lady who I'm speaking with tomorrow, she's gotten to see some of that evidence. She's gotten to see the conversations between me and Natalie on Facebook Messenger. I've gotten to show her a message between Natalie and I about the abuse that she's had to endure at the hands of her father and many others in her life. I gotta go to the front door. Hopefully I won't have to encounter anyone being violent or mean or yelling or shouting. When I do get there, I'm gonna turn off the recording here. I'm at 41% battery, which ought to last just a few minutes at least. And my other phone is at 84%. Natalie did not deserve such a horrible life. She didn't deserve to have such a horrible family. I believe wholeheartedly that if people would have listened to me before Natalie died, instead of telling me to download a whole bunch of apps on my phone, if they'd have taught me how to take a fucking screenshot on my telephone in the entire year before Natalie was killed, over a year before she was killed, if I'd have been able to take a screenshot of the things that people were doing, if I'd have been able to record the things that people were doing, if someone would have just showed me how to do those simple things, I could have showed Natalie Bollinger exactly how people were treating me, and I believe wholeheartedly that she would have asked them to stop. I believe wholeheartedly she would have been angry with all of them for treating me the way that they did. The messages between Natalie and I, through our emails, show that I did in fact let Natalie know that I was being assaulted and harmed. I let her know I was being assaulted in November of 2016. That's well over a year before she was killed. I let Natalie, Alicia, and Maddie know that I was being harmed all at the same time. The reason I remember that is because I blocked them within about 4 hours of each other. When I was in Virginia, I blocked Natalie and Alicia Bollinger when I left the state. When I spoke with Maddie Boa to try to explain the situation, well, she wasn't very nice to me and I blocked her too. And when people were threatening me and assaulting me, I had to unblock them to let them know that people were hurting me. I was hoping that they would give a shit. People were harming me over shit that never happened. Things that were taken out of context and things that were intentionally painted in an improper light. And all they had to do was say mentally ill. This is something that Natalie Bollinger herself had complained about. How every time somebody harms her, they just do the mentally ill thing and tell her it's her fault because she's a heroin addict. Well, you don't have to be a heroin addict for people to do harmful shit like that. My mother used to do the same thing. Oh, you're mentally ill, Sean. You're mentally ill. You're mentally ill, Terry. You're mentally ill. You're mentally ill, Eric. You're mentally ill. You're mentally ill, Michael. You're mentally ill. You're mentally ill, Scott. You're mentally ill. Like, fuck, Mom. You're mentally ill. We can all do that game, can't we? Run around calling each other mentally ill. My family's not much different from the family of Natalie Marie Bollinger. Same druggy ass scoundrels. A lot of people do horrible stuff because they're on drugs or alcohol. And those folks, to varying degrees, don't really like or get along with people who don't do their drug of choice. The people in Natalie Marie Bollinger's life who victimized her all got away with it because the police didn't want to do their job for a disabled homeless man. Let's see if I can make it to the safe way without being threatened, harassed, intimidated. I probably can. This is the closest to a safe place that I've had in 7 years or so. In a small town, it doesn't matter who's right. It matters who's most popular. Well, I show evidence, and that's not popular. I know that it's not popular. People don't like being exposed. They don't like being told on. They don't like it when people show the truth about them and their not so perfect lives. None of us have perfect lives. Is any of that an excuse to look away from the crimes that I'm trying to show? Andrew Wolnez is not my biggest issue. The actions of law enforcement are my biggest issue. And witnesses not coming forward with me. If you don't do it with me, I just have to take your word for it. Having evidence of abuse is important. However, it's only important if you can turn it in safely. When you're able to record the reasons that you cannot turn it in safely, you have to turn that in immediately. You need to get help to bring it in immediately. Otherwise, your predators get to retaliate against you. If your predators, if some of them are cops, they've got a lot of resources available to them. All paid for by your tax dollars. The same tax dollars that are used to pay for the incarceration of innocent individuals who just happen to be homeless. Who's most likely to win in court? The person with the most money. Anyway, to my knowledge, nobody's yelled or screamed at me as far as wolnez goes today. I have heard some screaming and shouting in the parking lot. No rocks hit my vehicle to my knowledge. Not while I'm in it anyway. It's getting pretty chilly, so I'm going to go inside. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to fill this lady in on some pretty important details. It would have been nice with all these people if we could deal with this out of court as human beings. Good Viridia, thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and your sister's keeper too. And no victim left behind.